So I think best just start with the advocate, Dr. Mary Goss. Would you welcome her, please? Mary, well done. You're welcome. Now, I've got to press this thing to get you going. You see, are you ready to go?
I am.
And it's 5. Are you ready?
Yes.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're gone. We're fine. Go well. Take care.
Our vantage point is high above the valley and provides a bird's eye view of the landscape on all sides. We turn to face southeast and examine the scene that stretches away to the horizon. The undulating drumlin landscape to the left blends in the distance into the foothills of the Mourne Mountains. To the right, the hilly landscape is more rugged and falls away steeply to the shoreline. Our eyes are drawn to the horizon where the outline of the Mournes and their broad coastal plain comes close to the mass of the ancient Cooley Mountains as they fade away to the right. The centre of the view is dominated by a narrow fjord that weaves between the hills to the sea beyond. It is low tide. In the foreground, we can see the river that seems too small for the glaciated Glenree Valley through which it flows. The river floodplain is dominated by tracts of marshland, and below the high water mark, its narrow channel winds through the broad expanse of mudflats that has been exposed by the receding tide. Becoming accustomed to the apparently uninhabited scene, we might notice for the first time wisps of smoke rising from some tiny dwellings dotted on the tops of drumlins to the left, and others in an area close to the high water mark near the river mouth. These dwellings are clustered close to a building of more sturdy construction and a wide-spreading ancient tree that seems darker and denser than any of the other trees that are growing in clumps nearby. It is spring 1140, and there's a flurry of activity among the dwellings today because a special visitor is passing through on the first leg of a long journey. St. Malachy, Archbishop of Armagh, has stopped off with his travelling companions. They are bound for Rome. On the way, when passing through eastern France, they plan to visit St. Bernard in the great Cistercian Abbey of Clairvaux. Malachy's time in Clairvaux allowed him to establish a personal friendship with St. Bernard, and 4 of the men who travelled from Ireland remained on to train as Cistercians when the Archbishop returned home, determined to introduce Cistercianism to Ireland. St. Bernard perceived the Ireland of that time to be a land in the depths of barbarism. He's recorded as saying that never had he found men so shameful in their morals, so wild in their rites, so impious in their faith, so barbarous in their laws, so stubborn in discipline, so unclean in their life. They were Christians in name, but in fact they were pagan. 2 years later, in 1142, the first monastery of a regular order to be established in Ireland was set up by a group of Cistercians who settled at a site chosen by St. Malachy at Mellifont, County Louth. Within 2 years, 7 monasteries affiliated to Mellifont had sprung up across the island, the first being among them that tiny cluster of dwellings where the ancient yew tree grew close to the shore at the mouth of that river, which would later be called the Clanrye. The leader of the group of Cistercians who came north to settle in Newry in 1144 was Fionn MacGormann. Fionn was a noted man of letters, and alongside his responsibilities in the new abbey and his elevation to the position of Bishop of Kildare, he found time to complete his compilation of the renowned Book of Leinster, now held in the library of Trinity College, Dublin, and containing, among many others, the story of the Táin Bó Cúailnge. As the first abbot, Fionn was responsible for the introduction and establishment of changes so profound that they were to transform every aspect of life for each person in the surrounding district. Changes which would continue to take place through the efforts of future abbots in ways that made the future town and its harbour the most impressive in the province of Ulster. Led by Fionn, the monks did not intend to remain aloof from the local people. They were part of an order whose enterprise and entrepreneurial spirit is central to its identity. The Cistercians, with their high standards of literacy and numeracy, combined with their capacity to converse and communicate in Latin, French, and other languages, were to prove valuable advocates for local people when they needed help and support. In time, under the influence of the monks, the barbarous laws mentioned by St. Bernard were replaced by Roman laws. Ecclesiastical customs were introduced, and the native rites began to fade in importance. The mother house at Mellifont was finally consecrated in 1157, a landmark year, which also saw the granting of a charter to the Newry Abbey by Maurice O'Loughlin, High King of Ireland. The charter, a 17th century copy of which is held in the Clarendon manuscripts in the British Museum, bestowed more than 6,000 acres of land, which included South Down townlands such as Ballynacraig, Sheeptown, Carnmean and Clonlean, Castlenigan, Crowban and Crowray, Corcreechy, Conlee, Grinan and Tormore, Carnacally and Ballyholand, Derrylecky, Listuff, Ryan and Baina, as well as extensive lands in counties Armagh and Louth. With all this farmland at their disposal, the monks could set about the task of recruiting lay brothers from the local community. The lay brothers who were not ordained were trained in farming skills needed to step up production on land previously used to eke out a basic subsistence diet for the native family groups. They were also trained in the essentials of the trades. The monks in their white robes must have seemed exotic and fascinating to the native people when they began moving among them to work the undulating and challenging farmland. The annals of the Four Masters record that in 1162, just 5 years after the granting of lands, the Cistercian community in Newry suffered a severe setback when fire destroyed the monastery, its library, and the ancient yew tree, which, according to oral tradition, had stood in the site for over 700 years. The literature records that the setback was short-lived, and the work of the Cistercians in the area was soon restored and flourishing again. Whenever the Cistercians went, or wherever the Cistercians went in the 12th century Europe, they were described as being catalysts for the development of a market economy. They were agriculturalists and breeders of cattle and horses, the great farmers of the Middle Ages with a working knowledge of the latest farming techniques designed to maximize output. This was complemented by their organized systems for selling surplus farm produce, livestock and horses. Their expertise in wool and cloth trade and their skill in harnessing water power were vital to the success of this new period of commercial prosperity. Eminent local historian Patrick Keenan wrote in 1945, "Besides ministering to the spiritual needs of the people, the Cistercians must have wrought a marked improvement in the material lives of the people. They were pioneers of agricultural science. The reclamation of fen and woodland, the cultivation of soil by the monks themselves, hitherto the task of the slave and the humblest of rustics, gave to agriculture a new impetus and raised the industry to the rank of a nobler employment." The contact with Europe and the heart of Cistercian innovation and thinking was regular and compulsory. Each abbot was expected to travel annually to eastern France to attend a general chapter. This ensured a steady flow of the latest ideas and insights relating to commerce and trade back into the Newry area. In doing this, they brought the name of Newry to the table in the company of leaders from the greatest abbeys across the continent. It's well recognised among historians, such as the eminent medievalist Jean Gimpel, that until the Industrial Revolution, most of the significant technological advances in Europe were made in the monasteries. The high level of industrial technology made possible the spread of new techniques. Every monastery had a model factory, often as large as the church and only several feet away, and water power drove the machinery of the various industries located on its floor. Water power was used for crushing wheat, sieving flour, fulling cloth and tanning, a level of technological achievement that could have been observed in practically all Cistercian monasteries. Evidence is limited. There's no reason to believe, though, that the Abbey at Newry would not have had many of these features. We do know that the monks traded hides, and that 4 centuries after its foundation, when Newry Monastery was finally suppressed by royal edict of Edward VII, or Edward VI, I should say, in 1548, an inquiry reported that the Abbey had within its grounds 2 salmon weirs and a water mill. The standing of the monks in the district was confirmed, and the Cistercians brought further honour to the Newry area when their abbot was made a mitred prelate by Hugh de Lacy, Earl of Ulster. In time, the image of a mitred abbot seated between 2 yew trees became a symbol of the Newry and Mourne area. The Cistercian Abbey dominated the Newry Valley for 4 centuries and after its suppression there was ample evidence that a succession of abbots remained in the town and involved themselves in social, economic and political affairs at local and national level. The strength of the foundation established under the leadership of Fionn MacGormann in 1144 was sufficient to withstand the setbacks of coping with a difficult and restricted site and to pave the way for lasting economic growth and development. Fionn and the abbots who succeeded him oversaw a revolution in agricultural practices and encouraged the secondary industrial activity powered by water mills to process agricultural produce, the introduction of commerce through international trade and the establishment and management of a weekly Thursday market serving the people of the district. It's no surprise that Sir John Davies, when describing the province of Ulster in the mid-1500s, stated there were only 2 towns on the east coast of the province, Knockfergus, later known as Carrickfergus, and the Newry. According to Davies, the remainder of the province was a very wilderness. The inhabitants, for the most part, have no certain habitation in any towns or villages. There can be no doubt that without the exceptional efforts of Fionn MacGormann and the Cistercian abbots who succeeded him, our little 12th century settlement at the head of the Glenree Valley would never have achieved its full potential, despite its substantial locational advantages. By the mid-16th century, the valley was beginning to become the focus of significant manufacturing, the centre of trade and service provision, a key nodal point on the growing network of routeways connecting important sites on the island of Ireland. The town of Newry was the largest in Ulster and held this position in the first half of the 17th century. In 1612, according to an inquisition concerning the estates of Arthur Bagnall, Newry contained 300 edifices, 2 water mills, and still had its weekly market. By the time the last recorded abbot, Patrick Crilly, died in 1655, some 511 years after Finn's work began, the town and its growing port were known across the world. Fionn MacGormann and those that succeeded him provided and maintained the conditions for social and economic growth that drove the transition from subsistence-based wilderness to thriving centre for commerce, trade and opportunity. The monks, through their travels and correspondence, ensured the regular mention of Newry and the many forms of its name across the length and breadth of the known world, bringing honour and renown to the district. Without their reforms and commercial developments, Newry would have missed out on centuries of innovation, and their huge contribution has been marked for hundreds of years through the uninterrupted use of this crest, with its familiar image of the mitred Cistercian abbot seated between 2 yew trees that symbolise the town and district. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that Fionn MacGormann and the abbots that succeeded him are Newry's greatest and deserve the highest votes you have on offer.
Here, here. Well done, Mary. Well done.